Ticats This Week.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ticats This Week. I'm RJ Broadhead. He is Luke Tasker, and we're looking forward to the Stampeders getting to Tim Hortons Field. 7 o'clock Eastern Time will be kickoff, and we're looking forward to calling that game because these are two teams that probably aren't where they thought they would be when this season began. The Tiger-Cats at 2-3 have not beat a West Division team this year, and Calgary, surprisingly, at 2-4. They are coming off a win on the road against Edmonton, so we'll see if they're riding a little bit of momentum. But we know that Tim Hortons Field is a tough place for visitors. And Luke, it really stood out to me this past two games. Labor Day, Tiger-Cats were so great at home, Tim Hortons Field against the Argonauts. And I remember most of the Ticats Audio Network staff, you and I included, walking out of there thinking, okay, it looks like the Ticats have figured things out. And now they're going to roll and steamroll some teams and really put some wins together. And then 4 days later, they go to Toronto and they seem like a different team. And credit to the Argonauts, they were better in that game as well. But that really stood out to me is how dominant the Tiger-Cats are at home, because the same opponent, few days apart, and they looked so different. And I asked Coach O about it, and, you know, there's really not an answer, I guess, but he did say that the fans, and you've experienced it at Tim Hortons Field, just must be a different mindset for the team. And are the fans that important?
Yeah, I think that they are. And it's a home game is a lot of things. You know, you get the fans, you also get to just do things in your regular routine, right? You come into the stadium just like you do for practice, and you get ready in your own hot tubs, in your own training room, and, you know, your own locker, of course. And there's a level of just comfort there. And there is a mojo you get in your home stadium. In 2014, when the Ticats were struggling to get things together, and we had the Labor Day Classic was the first game in Tim Hortons Field. And then the home games, the wins at home started compiling, and it just got this feeling like we don't lose at home. Obviously, in 2019, the home schedule was perfect. You do get, you know, winning is a habit. It's a pattern. And when you're in the stadium that you love and fans that you love, it can kind of compound and become almost easier as you go along. And you said it well, though. In Toronto, it wasn't just you got to give credit to the Argonauts. They did, because in the Labor Day Classic at Tim Hortons Field, they made some costly errors. They made some, especially turnovers and penalties. They really, really hurt themselves, and they cleaned up some of that at their own at BMO Field a few days later. And so it's a wildly complex game, right? There are so many factors involved, but hard to say that, you know, I think even statistically it's significant, the winning percentage for the Ticats at home. So excited to see what this Friday holds, because for my career, I don't know if we saw Calgary with a record to the beginning of their season like we see them now. So they're different than they've been. The Ticats, you know, Coach O keeps reminding you, this isn't the 2019 Ticats. This is a different Ticats team that has to find their own way to the Grey Cup. Calgary's probably saying a lot of the similar things. And so it's two teams trying to, you know, still scrapping and clawing. So it'll be a really good matchup, I think, on Friday.
Yeah, it is surprising because both of these teams have been powerhouses for a while and expected to be really good. And there's still a lot of season left, 14-game season, maybe not a ton of season. But now that you're a media guy, you got to look at things like the next 5 games for the Tiger-Cats. And this is kind of, to me, where they're going to determine where they finish. So the next 5 games, 4 of them are at home, including Calgary on Friday, and the one road game is in Ottawa, and Ottawa is struggling this year. So if you're a contending team that thinks you have a chance at winning a Grey Cup like the Tiger-Cats, those are games you have to win. So these next 5 games, I know players and coaches and teams don't want to look too far ahead. We can do that as media. Do you see these next 5 games as a real chance for the Tiger-Cats to solidify themselves and find their identity and get on that roll that we've been waiting for?
First of all, yes, well said. Now that I've crossed the booth, I can just do whatever. I can do whatever I want now.
That's right.
I can hypothesize and think about these things. Yeah, because as a player, 5 games away that might as well be 20 years away. There's just so many things to happen before then. But Yeah, if you take a look now through into what is December this year for the Grey Cup, these next five, well, put it this way, there will be some teams who solidify their fate in the next 5 weeks. To be honest, I always found there's a handful of years only that I played where that happened and where the last couple of games didn't matter. Very often, you're fighting for everything's still on the table late in the season. And so you set yourself up over these next 5 weeks, and then there will be a handful of teams who realize, wow, we're going to be in that position where if we win out the last 3 games of the season, we're set. If we got to win 2 and this team has to lose one of their 2, you start to get these interesting scenarios. But the Ticats have some work to do still. This stretch of home games, I think you're right. You get to the end of the season and you look back and you say that's where they sort of solidified what was going to happen to them this year. And of course, the reality is that could go good or bad. One of my favorite stories of my career was the 2014, the last game of the season. And the scenario was this for the Ticats: if we lose, we're out of the playoffs. If we win by less than 8, we're into the playoffs in second place. And if we win by more than 8, we're in first place and get a bye week. And that was after 18 games, all of that was still on the table. And we ended up beating Montreal to then get by more than 8 to then get the bye week to then play Montreal at home for the Eastern Final. It's like, what? Like, what an incredible story there. And it's like just a really cool thing that can happen at the end of the season when you have four teams in your division. So we'll see how it shakes down. But this stretch of road games as a player, you go like, oh my gosh, finally. And all you got to do is travel to Ottawa. You're probably going to take a train out to Ottawa, which is, take a beautiful ride out through, Ontario and into Ottawa there. And then, you get to just be at home for all these weeks. So we'll see. Great opportunity for the Ticats.
Absolutely. And Calgary's their only West Division opponent. They've got Ottawa home and away in that stretch, Montreal and Toronto as well. So playing predominantly East Division opponents. So this will be one game at a time, and that's, of course, Calgary on Friday. But just looking ahead, it is an important part of the schedule for the Tiger-Cats. We all know they had a tough schedule to begin the year, starting in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. So I want to ask you, Luke, do you want the good news or the interesting news? I'm not going to say bad news. We're going to call it interesting news. What do you want first? In that case,
give me the good news, and we'll end with the interesting.
All right. It looks like the starting 12 on defense, that the A-plus group, the number one group, looks like they'll be back for Friday's game. Deontay Evans will be back at halfback, so Frankie can move over to cornerback. So that defense, you look at what they've done, Luke, and they've held opponents to under 20 points in 4 of the 5 games. So they've definitely done their job.
Yeah, I think you can say that. They've been impressive in a lot of ways. There's been some moments where they've struggled with the run defense for sure, and some opponents specifically. That said, we kind of expected a much stronger run game from Montreal, and that was one of the Ticats' defense, best games so far this season. But there is a lot of outstanding players, especially in the defensive secondary and then the front four as well. And I don't know. I mean, I said it going into Toronto. I just don't. Hard to imagine what a team is planning to do against these guys. That said, Toronto was able to string a couple successful drives together. Deontay Evans back, and like you said, the true, the 12 that were meant to be there are healthy and back in, and I'm very excited to watch that group again.
So the interesting news now?
Go for it.
Well, it's, poor Coach O, he's probably wishing for those training camp questions of, is it going to be 1A quarterback or 1B quarterback, and Dane Evans or Jeremiah Masoli? Now we're on to number 3 because Dane Evans is out. Jeremiah Masoli looks like he'll back up but won't start. So it's David Watford in at quarterback, and it's an opportunity for him to step up, and that's what sports is all about. But you look at Brandon Banks, most outstanding player, number 1 receiver when he's healthy. He won't play. Sean Thomas Erlington has been limited at practice. So how effective and how much will he play in the game coming up? And you'd have to think a young quarterback, the running game would be fairly important. So, maybe Jackson Bennett and Malik Irons have an opportunity. But for David Watford, you played with him in 2019. It's a tough situation to come in. Tiger-Cats need to win this game. What are his strengths, and how do you foresee the game going with David Watford in there at quarterback?
Yeah, he's got a great approach to the game, and he has a very strong arm objectively. The tough thing, I think, for Watford, you've got, I think Jalen Acklin is the longest tenured Ticat in the wide receiver group, which is mind-blowing. I mean, I was with Jalen in 2019, and I really, really, really like the way that Acklin approaches the game. He is very smart, wants to be great, really, really wants to win, and that's awesome. But he's got 1 year of experience. It's a very strange thing for a CFL lineup to look like that. I think that this receiver group, I use this phrase in the Coach O show this week. You got to have an attitude and a physical demeanor of being quarterback friendly, especially with a young quarterback. Like, you got to make him feel real good about what he's seeing out there. And it kind of, the best way I can describe it is you run a classic. You're in the boundary and you run a classic sort of seam that dig. You turn that into a dig and you're wrapping the will linebacker. That body language of just having your chest and your eyes and you're ready to go, where he just feels so confident that you're in the right spot, and you're kind of convincing each other that you're on the same page as the game goes along. And it's hard with young guys who don't have a ton of experience, with a quarterback without much playing time. I think that part of this comes down to Tommy Condell and his decision making, not just in the game, but in the decision making into how much is appropriate to be available to the play call that game. So are they going to have 3 layers of wristbands for David Watford? I don't know. I think that you have some plays where the decision making is limited, where some things that are just tagged, where the concepts can kind of be simplified, where each receiver just is almost told what to do in the huddle, as opposed to overly memorizing complex schemes. I think there are things, sometimes we have plays just where it was all 5 receivers, 5 hitches, and you just pick pretty much pre-snap which guy's matchup looks the cleanest. Some things that can just simplify the decision making for a young quarterback. I think certainly if an increase in some quick game where Watford can get the ball 3-step from the shotgun and has his options sitting right there, and if it's not there, he runs. So I think I expect to see some of that simplified passing offense, and simple is not bad. Simple is not. That's not the opposite of good. It means a little bit easier mentally, so that physically you can really be great. So we'll see what it looks like. That said, David Watford has been in the system throughout 2019. Obviously, missed some time in the interim there during preparing for this season, but he's been around the offensive scheme, and so would also be, I'm not going to be surprised if they don't stray far from what they've been. But you got to kind of, that first quarter, I'm hoping that they figure out a few things that work for the young quarterback.
And just finally, Luke, under the lights, Tim Hortons Field, first game under the lights at Tim Hortons Field for some receivers, yeah. Stephen Dunbar, Tim White, Pappy White, all ready to start at receiver. You played that position. Any nuances at Tim Hortons Field under the lights that we can watch for on Friday?
Yeah, every stadium you have that angle where the lights come into play, the stadium lights. But if it's not nighttime with the lights, then it's the daytime, and the sun does the same thing. So that's just football. There's going to be some of those strange angles. I can remember times where players had struggled. I can remember some drops that we had as a room with the lights, and I can remember times where it was hard for myself as well. I don't really think that Tim Hortons Field has anything particularly worse about that than other stadiums. It's just something you have to think about everywhere you play. Certainly a great environment football-wise with the fans there, and just a great, Hamilton is so has just such a great CFL presence there. I'm just picturing our scoring touchdowns at the night and the fans. And I remember throwing a ball to my brother in the stands after a touchdown one time, a ball that he still has. And, it's just going to be a very, very exciting environment. And I'm hoping that we get to see and call a great game. That would be the most fun.
Exactly. Looking forward to the fans, looking forward to the first night game at Tim Hortons Field, so it should be fantastic. Nice job, Luke. We'll look forward to Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern time, calling the game.
Can't wait. I'll see you there, RJ. I'm looking forward to a great one.
All right, that's Ticats this week. The pregame with Andy Fantus and Louis B will be at 6 o'clock Eastern time. Ticats pregame, and then kickoff at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Myself and Luke will call the game. The Hamilton Tiger-Cats trying to continue that great home play against the Calgary Stampeders at 7 o'clock Eastern time. If you get to the game, that'll be great. If you can't, hope you listen.